The G7 summit held in Canananus, Alberta on June 16 will likely be remembered not for landmark agreements or displays of international unity, but for one of the most mortifying political collapses in recent memory. Far from a celebration of Canadian diplomacy or statesmanship, the event became a symbol of how quickly a carefully manufactured political persona can fall apart under pressure. It was a spectacle that underscored the peril of mistaking polish for preparedness, and nowhere was this more apparent than in the dramatic unraveling of Mark Carney's public image. Once viewed as the embodiment of Canadian competence and decorum, Carney had long been touted by his supporters as a future prime minister, a financial wizard turned statesman, equipped with an elite resume and the backing of powerful allies. His ascent was all but assumed. He had been packaged as the intellectual heavyweight who could hold his own on the world stage, someone with the temperament and the insight to lead Canada through uncertain times. But in the space of a single day, a single appearance, really, that entire narrative was upended in breathtaking fashion. This was not a minor misstep. It wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a slip of the tongue. What unfolded at the summit was a full-scale political implosion. The kind of debacle so glaring, so unignorable, that it could only be compared to slipping dramatically in front of a global audience, all while clutching a tray of fine glassware. It was clear from the outset that this wasn't going to be a triumph for Carney. The atmosphere was tense. Cameras were trained on every gesture, microphones ready to catch every word. This was the kind of high-stakes gathering where real leaders assert themselves, where diplomacy and strength are meant to be balanced with poise. Carney, however, appeared visibly out of his depth from the moment he arrived. Rather than seizing the opportunity to demonstrate gravitas and strategic vision, Carney began his remarks by wishing Donald Trump a happy birthday. What should have been a moment of purpose and clarity quickly dissolved into an awkward, sycophantic display that left observers baffled. It was not just inappropriate, it was tone-deaf. Instead of exuding strength and command, Carney came across as starstruck and insecure, fumbling like a junior aide trying to impress a celebrity rather than a seasoned leader engaging with a controversial peer. The awkwardness didn't end there. As Trump launched into his now familiar monologue on tariffs, confidently branding himself a tariff person and outlining his blunt economic worldview, Carney had every opportunity to respond with substance, to push back with facts or defend Canada's interests. Yet, rather than rising to the challenge, Carney stood silently, nodding along, eyes darting, clearly unsure of how to react. His body language screamed discomfort. His face betrayed a man who knew the moment was slipping away but lacked the tools or courage to do anything about it. There was no counter-argument. No challenge. Not even a carefully worded diplomatic retort. Just a flustered silence and awkward fidgeting, a performance that fell far short of expectations. The contrast between the two figures could not have been more pronounced. Trump, for all his bluster, projected confidence and clarity in his own worldview. Carney, by comparison, looked overwhelmed and overmatched, like a substitute teacher facing down an unruly class. It was a painful viewing experience for Canadians who had been led to believe that Carney was a leader of rare capability. Instead, they saw someone who seemed to crumble under pressure, lacking both the rhetorical strength and the political instincts to navigate a tough international exchange. The backlash was swift and brutal. Social media lit up with criticism. Clips of the awkward exchange were shared thousands of times, accompanied by hashtags and memes that mocked Carney's performance. Pundits on television and radio dissected the moment with glee. Even media outlets that had previously championed Carney's rise found themselves unable to spin the incident into anything positive. Editorials questioned his credibility. Talk radio hosts lampooned him as a lightweight. And within the Liberal Party, reports emerged of deep dissatisfaction and private outrage. Some members reportedly called the performance an embarrassment, with insiders leaking details of internal meetings where Carney's leadership was openly questioned. Amid the fallout, speculation about Carney's political future intensified. The idea of him leading the party or the country suddenly seemed not just unlikely, but laughable. The summit had shattered the illusion. The man who had been presented as Canada's answer to competent, global-minded leadership had been exposed as unprepared and uninspiring when it mattered most. Meanwhile, his political rival, Pierre Poilievre, seized the moment. As Carney faltered, Poilievre surged, presenting himself as a clear, confident, and grounded alternative. His direct style and unapologetic messaging resonated with Canadians who were disillusioned by Carney's perceived weakness. Donations to Poilievre's campaign spiked. His rallies swelled in size. His approval ratings climbed. The juxtaposition could not have been clearer. One man spoke plainly and forcefully about the country's direction, while the other struggled to hold his ground on the world's most visible stage. For many Canadians, this episode was a turning point, a moment when the difference between media-crafted image and real-world capability became starkly visible. The highly curated persona of Mark Carney, built on international acclaim and glowing profiles, crumbled under the weight of a single moment of truth. The summit had given him the chance to prove his worth, to demonstrate substance behind the style, and he failed. Not only did he fail, but he did so in a way that made it impossible for the public to unsee. The humiliation wasn't just professional, it was symbolic. As the political tide continues to shift in Canada, one thing has become increasingly clear: voters are no longer interested in leaders who simply look the part. They want authenticity, resilience, and a demonstrated ability to act under pressure. The G7 summit didn't just mark the end of Carney's leadership aspirations, it signaled a broader rejection of style over substance politics. Canadians are watching closely now. And after the events of June 16, they've made one thing perfectly clear: the era of empty charisma is over, and the demand for real, decisive leadership has never been stronger.